Okay, this is interesting. Um, Apparently, unlike the quote left, the right wing's been listening. Everything Josh Hawley has said here, I've said, and especially somebody like him who's he's one of those persons, in the manosphere or whatever that's part of. It's more right wing, so to speak. A lot of the quote MGTOW, but I don't believe in that whole the barefoot and pregnant. First off, it's just not the way I view a person should be able to live their life. But at the same time, I do believe just by the way we are structured in communication, as Kevin Samuels put it, you want our protection, then these are what we expect, what we need for that return on protection. And since the modern feminine does not want to do those things, there's no reason for me as a man to go dealing with that headache, especially as we're seeing it's very, very passive aggressive and all this other crap. Guarantee you, Josh Hawley married a woman who he can sim completely does what he tells her to do, as opposed to actually working together. Or he would think they're working together, but it's his idea that you do what I say, just by everything he said in that Axios and Eclipse. But the part without Axios clips, especially talking about being manly, and he said something that was interesting. It was about the jobs going overseas. First, he said, "You guys need to quit playing Nintendo and they'll get a job." But then there's no jobs because of deindustrialization. Then you can't get a job because there's no secondary education to train these people to get those better paying jobs, because you're slapping them with 30,000, 20, even if you're just going out and get a welding job, you're still going to be slapped with five to $10,000 worth of debt, and you're still not sure if you're going to get a job. And then that was the first thing they stripped out of the Build Back Better Act, and the things. So it's so once again, I kind of been watching this trend for the last month and a half, 2 months actually, as far as me saying something and then taking it and spinning it and then using it, while the quote left has just been too busy trying to glam on and disrespect me as a human being and as a man. And so they're doing the same thing. But once again, back to what I said before, as far as the gay guys, are you doing now? There should be like 1,000 European American gay men talking about their feelings and all this should be start popping out now, right? Because if I wasn't accurate in this, then and it has to continue for 9 months. Oh, and you cannot have African Americans doing that against me either. So by themselves, every time a European American guy, straight cisgender European American guy speaks, a gay or trans person has to say something. So we should see a plethora of gay and trans people speaking now, right? I doubt it, but that's where I'm talking about. Secondary thing is I've noticed, okay, those persons who thought they were going to play and make money off of my name without my approval, and I called them out. Some of them were a little upset. That's that's actually expected behavior because it fits within the pattern behavior I was expecting of one of the persons I was speaking of, and then how they would manage the pattern behavior to maintain control of the person they think they have control over. Actually, so it's very interesting to watch. So let's look at what's in the Build Back Better Act and what's not, and why it is so important to get it passed, especially for voting rights. Because if you don't have these things that make people's lives better, we can't. Um, so we have Ways and Means, Education and Labor. So increase in transportation. So this is where money, science, technology, small businesses, and you're throwing the vets under the bus. Well, ain't that some shit? Don't say jack shit about thank you for your service if this does not go through if you leave this on the chopping block. You can kiss my buttocks. And it once again, um, this is the so-called framework, um, childcare that's going to help people, men and women, get to work. Because if you're worried about your kid, and what will the oligarchs do? They'll try to raise childcare prices just like they do with the Pell Grants and stuff. So it has to be built in a way that it does not hurt the people it's supposed to be helping. Two, the thing is, you need voting rights so that way when the young people come into play, they can vote and help get the thing they want, which is to start their life off without crushing debt. That used to be the amount of debt that's coming out of college for these is usually enough to pay for a house. But if you're under that debt, that payment does no longer goes to the housing; it goes to keep you just to catch up. And then now you have 100. So and then well it binds from rich people's perspectives or the oligarchs' perspectives, it binds people to them because they can't move because they own their production in the form of debt to gain the ability to make that production. They don't like that. Well, I think from where the millennials and the Gen Zs and even us Xers who are more entrepreneurial, and that's up to you. That's because a lot of the entrepreneurship came from the fact that the baby boomers were too much of an asshole and they had raised all the Gen Xers to be uh, latchkey kids, and so in their thinking that blowing off the Gen Xers wasn't going to have any effect, it has had a great effect on um, the Y and the Z and the millennials because of they're pretty much like I've said before, they're a lot more like X's than they are boomers because they see just how greedy and crappy the boomers were. I should say are. You inherited this great economy, this great thing. It probably has things are wrong, whatever, but then you tore it apart and shat on everybody, and then tried to blame it, and are still trying to blame it on everybody else, but the people who did it. These things, Manchin's saying, well, what's it cost? My statement is, what's the return on investments? When do I get my cash back? How is it going to affect and raise GDP? If we're putting 6 trillion into something, or well, not 6 trillion, but Manchin, my numbers, I've said it's 1.75 for now. So he's going to try to cut it down. He goes into his Southern gentleman BS right when he's about to pretty much BS you. So he's going to try, him and Cinema are going to try to lower it. You have to push voting rights at the exact same time. Notice when we switched to voting rights, they all suddenly threw out, okay, we'll put prescription drug price back in. Basically, that was just to placate and shut people up and say, oh, it's not going to happen anyways. We'll just throw it in so they'll shut it up. So they'll shut up. No, they're afraid of voting rights. Their donors are afraid of voting rights. So voting rights pressed at the exact same time to build back better. Then you have, because the thing is, you can do both of these. You can do the filibuster carve out and nail both of them at the exact same time, especially also all three, because you can actually do the um, the debt ceiling, which McConnell's going to try to pull. He's already signaled that as well. Also, right now it's kind of quiet in the media sphere. We know that they're going to start increasing and ratcheting up the fear and anger, and they're going to do the pinging. They're going to try to get you to get people to get pinged by something, then look it up, and then on the back end, they're going to have their right wing trolls and working with the Russians to create a media sphere so that so they get sucked into the echo chamber and disappear into the crazy world. That's what they're doing. This is why voting rights needs to go through. This is why the filibuster has to be, and McConnell's gonna be like, well, I can, well, if you do this, I'm gonna do it to you. Okay, you're gonna shove these bills down American people's throat. Even if the filibusters, at that point, the Dems are gonna have to say, okay, if we do the filibuster, because there should be the way it is now as a non-talking filibuster is a bunch of BS. And so Mitch McConnell you can say whatever you want. It means the Democrats don't have any backbone. And they're expecting you not to have any backbone. You know, let's get real. They're fairly psychopathic and narcissistic, cluster B type persons. They think their backbone is just reason it seems like they have backbone is they actually don't have backbone. They're actually cowards. But they have is that opposite day thing that they do. You say A, they have to say B. You say B, they have to say A. They really don't have any ideas. They just know that as long as I can get greed, and then the person with the ideas, we can just steal and do the exact opposite and steal from them. That's all they're capable of. And if you understand that thinking process, you see it's always a dialectic. It's always A, B, dialectic. And yes, from a genius perspective, you're always going to do the dialectic. I remember learning that in my first college chem class. Professor told me about that way. But it is when it is when you're centered and you're thinking that way, new ideas come up. When you are not a person but a projection of a child, it's always going to be opposite day. Mitch McConnell cares nothing about this country. He only cares about power. He realizes he made an error by not by not removing Trump after January 6th. He knows this now. He knows that the Democrats know it. He assumes the Democrats don't have the backbone, or he can put up enough walls, pull enough levers, and walk back enough to make enough of a mess that he's not pulled into it. Pull him into it. Make him pay for not doing what he was supposed to do as a senator under the Constitution. Because if it's not done, then we have become a dictatorship. They did everything they could to keep African Americans from waking up over the summer. They went out of their way to play the structures that they've put in African Americans' thinking for generations, and they've pulled every lever. And now they're going to pull the lever. Well, the final one, which is usually, well, you should have done, if you should go get a job, which is the same thing that they use in the Virginia, Kentucky areas, that Appalachia area, when there's African Americans, they'll say go get a job, or even just in the South, go get a job. But then on the backside is, well, you can't get that job, but there aren't any jobs left. Well, go get a job. You see, that's just the same argument. It's a BS argument. If they want more jobs, then they should be passing the Build Back Better. And until we truly have ability to debate in the Senate and return to normal order, where actually senators actually have conversations and not this BS that the psychopath, because if that dipshit down the several doors, well, is McConnell, then McConnell is nothing more than a very dark blob of hatred. So, leave this human infrastructure at your peril. Screw us vets over at your peril. And, You have a year. Adam Kinzinger stated, made a point. We have a year, well, actually less than a year. Probably by summer, the select committee should have the situation like, okay, done, wrapped up. It's a year at most. Because if this is not done, Trump's going to get away with it, with trying to overthrow the United States government. And you could see, we already see what he does as he gets the crowd, hammers their amygdala, and keeps the crowd all freaking ginnied up. This was going to get worse. If it's the only way to stop it, either way, it's going to get worse. Either if you do it or you don't. Might as well do it. If you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Might as well do and get the most out of what you got. So, anyways, it is suggested you go back to this, look at the numbers. This is what's being left out. So this is, this is all very sensical, numerically sensical. All of this, helps the United States grow. This helps us as human beings be better people. This helps us create jobs. This helps create ideas, which create factories, and then, there's so much more. And it's, it needs to happen. And I'm just, the Democrats are known to just have no backbone and fold. And so, and then you have Josh Hawley, I call him your polite white, your well-dressed white nationalist. He's a skinhead, as far as I'm concerned. His actions are that of the same of the skinheads I run into, and he does the whole Wellanoa, which definitely is their favorite. Someone goes, well, I'm like, all right, here comes the bullshit, because it's done with, it's the rhythm, and they know it, and everyone knows it. Everyone knows the the rhythm that someone goes into when they start going giving you a bunch of bullshit. And he has the bullshit down. And when he did that smile during this, he was like, haha, I got you to walk into that. As he did, which is a duper's delight. Hardcore duper's delight. Let me show it to you real quick. So if you see that ever again, this one's definitely the Joker's duper's delight. I like to call with a super. Look at the contempt. Right there. When he was asking him, and that's so pedantic. We got to call men back to responsibility. So you're just telling them you're being a little child. So this gives him his ego thrust. And you see he's like, see, there's that right there. That right there is withheld rage. He had now pedantically put everyone down, including the interviewer, and the interviewer's asking him questions back. You now know his weakness. So Filibuster, 55 votes, 41 senators need to hold the floor. Prove me why we shouldn't. Now, what will McConnell do if you can't totally get rid of it because he wants you to get rid of it because he doesn't take responsibility for anything. So, putting just making it very for this the voting rights and to get this budget thing through because the main goal is to force regular order of debate as opposed to playing games and then shutting things down, which is all McConnell wants. Because if you shut things down, people are going to realize their lives are being made shittier by McConnell. Absolutely horrible. Absolutely horrible. Psychopaths, narcissists, cluster Bs, they think the same process over and over and over. So, and all he cares about, it's known throughout apparently, he's just pure power. All he wants is power, even though he just gave it up thinking he can gain the power of the mob. Two things, man. Voting rights, get the other part of the bill, and get this done. Because if you don't, the American Republic is done, and World War III will start. Because authoritarians always start a war. And if there's not someone strong enough to fight that back, with Russia and China's interference, China by strangleholding both South Africa, both Africa and South America, because we don't have really good ties there due to multiple reasons. But if we, they're doing that to basically completely stranglehold and pull every bit of trade towards China. Now, tactically or strategically, it kind of makes sense. But the way they're doing it, and then their personality of they're doing it, is we've been stepped on for all this time. You're a billion fucking people. You stepped on yourselves. It's multiple billion. So now we're going to tell the world what to do. Blah blah blah. Basically, a little child. But it's a dangerous situation. We need trade. We need to give these countries trade so they can not aid. So build back better. Got to get this voting rights through. Got to and then outmaneuver Mitch McConnell, because he has, and just assume only thing he cares about is covering his ass for not for his false power grab on January 6th, and just power, what he thinks is power. Which, speaking of which, once again, Mitch, what was your wife doing, and what did we get out of the transportation situation? Or is she a Chinese spy? Just like Rupert Murdoch's wife. Because now, and Rupert Murdoch's wife has done the a former wife has done the damage, because the Murdochs, Rupert, and then his eldest son are jerking themselves off in destroying the Western civilization, or the secular order, where people truly are free. And that's the irony of what's going on. All these right-wing people talking about freedom. Well, their freedom is they're arguing for is the freedom to enslave themselves, because they think they can enslave others, when in reality they end up enslaving themselves.